Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Man Cave Chronicles. Your host, James Dean Littlejohn. Well, that's me. How the devil are you on this fine Remembrance Sunday? I'm here to talk to you. I've had I don't know what it was. I think the driver for me today about mental health was talking to all of those military, colleagues, so to speak, being ex-military myself. Talking to colleagues all day, talking about life, talking about how, there's veterans that were there, they were struggling, and predominantly most of the people I spoke to were men, because that's the main bulk of our military is men. So it was a really interesting day, a mixture of emotions, really. And I'm not taking that away from women in any way, shape, or form. There is a lot of women out there, and I fully appreciate even talking to some of the women about things like talking about PTSD was one of the biggest things today. Was I was just sort of opening conversation. How have you been? Have you been on been on tour or anything like that? Obviously, not trying to make intrusive questions, but just to try and draw out their mood, to try and draw out how people felt about the day, about themselves, about their journey. And I got an absolute plethora of information, feeling, emotions from today, which were all positive. I think a majority of them positive. Obviously, there's an element of sort of negativity when you start talking about mental health. You've been around military, you've been around soldiers. There was young soldiers that were apprehensive about future, with the Ukrainian war. And I'm not going to go into politics because that's not what I'm here to do. But it was interesting how that all fed in. Today's politics, we're trying to sort of build a military force up. You see it all the time. And as somebody who's served, who's been to active duty as well, it's really important that we address mental health and talk openly. And sorry, there was a fly that just buzzed in front of me then. And we talk openly, we talk honestly about it. And do you know what? I think the most rewarding thing I got from today, and this feeds back into why I spoke about men predominantly, is all of the men that I spoke to were open about their conversation, and they were open about themselves, which was a real head turner for me, because inherently, most of the journey that I've come along, bearing in mind, I was raised in the 80s where, you didn't have mental health, just wasn't spoken about. Men inherently from the 80s and before, even the 90s, we didn't really talk about mental health. We've only really been starting to unfold a little bit of that for men in the recent times. And I'd probably say the last couple of years, to be honest. So it was really refreshing to see that. It was really refreshing to, hear the pressures that the youth of today that are going through the military now, the pressures, the uncertainty, the things that they experience, and try and tie that into a world where we know about mental health and we talk about it openly, sometimes too openly. There's a big spout of things at the moment we see in the media about anxiety and how it's overly abused. And to be honest, I'm gonna probably say, as somebody who's anxious myself, I'm actually going to side. I think it is overly used. I get anxious. It's part of the mental health condition of being neurodivergent. However, I learn to manage it. And I think that that's one of the biggest things. I always come back. I always revert back to, you need to understand yourself. You need to understand what makes you tick. You need to understand what your triggers are. And a lot of us don't do that. So, what happens is a lot of people put themselves, and I'm going to talk, the reason I'm going to sort of nestle into this really, because it's going to be a little bit about what I'm talking about today. But it was really rewarding. And I think for us, there is an inherent sort of nature, and even I think I felt it today talking about the youngsters. Even the youngsters were very apprehensive, very anxious about things, and I was like, why are you anxious? You joined the military, and they couldn't really say. They were saying, I'm just anxious about the world. And most of the time when we spoke about it, and we got to the real nitty gritty of what we think about, why we are anxious, is because this is like, it's chucked in our face daily, every single day. You see it on the news 24/7. We're manipulated by the news 24/7. You get BBC 24/7. You've got Sky 24/7. You've got fucking Fox Network 24/7. Whatever. You can get the news 24/7. Although I suffer from an element of anxiety around my neurodivergent state, shall we put it, it's not a driver for me, because we weren't allowed to be anxious in the 80s and the 90s. You just kind of got on with it. I think that one of the biggest, most prevalent pieces of information that would, the way we raise our children now compared to the way that I was raised, I can happily say that, because I'm one of those parents that is equally adding to the anxiety is when I was younger, 1981 I was born. When I was younger, going through teenage years in the 1990s, it was a case of you went out, you came in when the streetlights came on, which was usually around about 9 o'clock. And then you were just about sort of 10 o'clock if you were really pushing your luck. But I remember traveling miles. I remember fucking, going anywhere, never telling my parents where I was, just fucking off and enjoying life. I couldn't get anxious. I jumped on a bus. You went from a bus point A to point B. You didn't get anxious. You just knew that was the way to get from point A to point B. So you didn't have the options of being anxious. You were just like, well, I want to go to Bournemouth this weekend. I want to go to the beach. Well, how are you going to get there? I'm going to ask my parents. No, I'm not going to ask my parents because my parents tell me to fuck off because we work Monday to Friday and weekends are our time to relax. Again, I feed into that because I fucking, again, I'll feed into this. But to give you a little bit of background there, that's what I was raised like. You were very much, if you wanted to get from point A to point B, and point B to point A, you got on a bus. You didn't have a chance to be anxious at all. You just got on with it. You went down to shops, you got on with it. You were out till all hours, you got on with it. You had a fight, you got on with it. You had a relationship, you got on with it. Everything was just a case of, we weren't filtered by this abundance of social media and capturing absolutely everything. And I think that it's a double-edged sword. It's really good to capture memories, but it also at the same time, do we capture too much to make us anxious? And I think we do. Especially when you look on every social media platform. Every social media platform has some sort of anxious nature to it, because you can be scrolling away and before you know it, all of a sudden you come across this thing that you didn't expect to see and you're like, fucking hell, so it's embedding you. It's embedding that anxious nature into you because you just think that round the corner something's going to happen to you. And I wasn't raised like that. I was raised with crack the fuck on. I left at 17. I never went back. I've got my 19-year-old still living with me. So, and the chances of her living here for a fair few years are highly likely. Can't afford to leave and go out and buy a house and start their lives. So they're not allowed to fly the coop as quick as we were able to fly the coop. 16, you were eager. You were like chomping at the bit. I'm getting the fuck out of it. I want to start LIVIN. I want to live, baby. So it's really weird how we look at life now, and the reason I say that this is happening, and this is the reason I'm feeding into that, is because I'm very much like that. Because I see the 24/7 news, my girls, they don't go anywhere. And I remember using a scare tactic actually for my daughter. And for my daughters, I stood them all down and I was like, they went around the corner and I was like, where the fuck were you? I couldn't get hold of you. Your mobile phone wasn't on, whatever. They'd been gone about 30 seconds, to be fair. And it felt like 30, it felt like a lifetime for me. I was a parent, but it was nothing in the grand scheme of things compared to me being out from 8 o'clock in the morning till fucking 10 o'clock at night and never seeing my parents. The only time I used to usually come in would be about midday to grab a fucking sandwich and a packet of crisps and fuck off out again. I was never in the house. Never. And I suppose it's sort of, I've got the other element where I see all this news and I think I'm an anxious parent now. And even having with that upbringing, I'm like really reluctant. And like I said, I gave my daughters a scare tactic one day. And I remember saying to them, if you get lost and you go around the corner and someone takes you, there's a 99.9% recurring chance that I will never see you again. It's as simple as that. And that's a hefty fucking scare tactic, isn't it? I was like, I'll never see you again. So you will never have, it doesn't matter what age you are, I'll never see you again. They're not asking me for ransom money because they're getting fuck all out of me. They'll get a couple of bottle tops, you know what I mean? That's all they'll get out of me, and some lint and maybe a penny piece. They're not going to give you anything significant. So they're taking you for another reason. So, and that was my scare tactic. That was my way of telling my kids, stay the fuck local. If I can't fucking hear you, then, there's an issue. If I can't walk out the front door and shout your name and you come round the corner, then we're going to have fucking words. What sort of parent? Now, I think that's the best parent in the world for me. I'm like, I know they're safe and they're here, but all that's done is feed anxiety into my kids because I've embedded this fucking notion that they're going to get robbed any second now. And I think there's something like fucking 730,000. I saw a podcast with a famous podcaster and he said it was something like 730,000 to one chance that your kid's going to be stolen, and also that obviously that's statistical, balance out a little bit sort of in favor of the reality if you were living in a high crime area. But in most of us, we don't live in high crime areas. I certainly don't live in a high crime area, so at best it's petty theft, petty garden theft. So why do I have that anxious nature? And I suppose the reflection element of me is thinking it's probably down to the fact that it's chucked in my face, and I worry about fucking nonsense on the fucking street, and you see, paedophile hunters and paedophile predators and all this sort of shit, and you're like, yeah, fucking, I don't know, could be someone around the corner, and you often get this absolute crazy notion that just over filters things, and then you scare them into your children. Now your children don't want to leave the area, and they're worried. It doesn't allow them to live. And I'll be honest, I fed into that. And it was, I saw this on a podcast, which myself made me go, do you know what? You're fucking right. This is worth talking about. We need to be cautious about how we raise our children. There needs to be an element of safety. But I think with, mobile phones, Find My iPhone and all these apps that can track your fucking kids within a meter now, and they don't go off and you can send alarms and all this sort of stuff. I think we're safer than we've ever been. So it's, even me, I was thinking back there, did I have any element of safety? And I don't. I remember jumping on my BMX one day, and I put a fishing rod, cable tied to this is how stupid I used to, I wasn't even thinking, but I had a fishing rod with a reel, cable tied to my frame, and I used to just go cycling for fucking miles to find a river and do a bit of poaching. And then you'd be like fucking there, and you'd sit there. And the reason I say I didn't even think is I had this fucking big 10-footer between my legs. Whee! I had to say it. And you would strap the fucker up. But I would get to the other side of like, how am I going to break the cable tie? And I remember having to try and smash the cable tie off my fucking frame, denting the shit out of it. But that was us. I was just like, yeah, this is nice and secure, going along, big fucking fishing rod sticking out the front and the back end, which is dangerous as fucking hell, just to go and do a bit of poaching. But you would do that all day in random rivers, through fields. We didn't even know we were allowed to be in those fields. But yeah, we had no safety. And I remember the introductions of pagers and reverse charges. So you could get to a phone box and you could reverse charge your parents. And you'd be like, do you accept this charges? And you sat there going, please accept this charge. Fucking please accept this charge. It's pissing down with rain. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I don't know where the fuck I am. I need you to come and get me. But that would be it. You'd have reverse charges, then you'd have pages, and then we sort of encroached. I was the generation that saw the introduction of the mobile phone. The Motorola flip phone, I think it was. No, it wasn't. It was a Motorola big square block thing my dad had with a huge fucking aerial. It was like this big. I remember if you watch Happy TV, I think is it called Happy Trigger TV? Trigger Happy TV? Trigger Happy TV, I think it's called. That took me a little bit of a while to get around that, but Trigger Happy TV does this with this big phone. He goes, ah. We also used to talk like, where the fuck are you going? So I think so I don't know where it comes from. I think it's just that worry. I think it's like 24/7 news, which is it's an issue. It's an issue because I think we're using it, and it's getting to the point where no fucker wants to leave their front doors now. We don't feel safe. But yeah, feeding back into the military, I suppose it was nice, rewarding that there was people talking about their mental health, young children. I call them children, but because they are to me, I'm 44, and these were 17, 18-year-olds joining the military. There was loads of them, cadets even. They were aspiring to be in the military as well. And I suppose you kind of get to the point where you're like talking to these, and you talk to the older generations, the ones that have been in fucking 30, 40 years, whatever it is, 25 years. I don't know what it is. Some of them were in 30 years, I think. And then you've got reservists that love it that much. They do the reserve side of things. And then, but you hear about the stories from them, and it was very, very humbling to hear people. And I remember, I remember my tour like it was yesterday. And it's one of those sort of links in time that you never forget. Like I physically remember landing in Kandahar, and I remember jumping under the table because we had to go, we had an air raid siren come in, and it was happening all the time. I later found out. You get a bit numb to it, which is really weird. But I remember the first time I just literally got off the C-17. And we were waiting for the next jump to the next place on the Hercules, and we were sat there just doing our check-ins, making sure we were all there and doing all present correct. We'd had fucking days where we hadn't sort of shower. I think we'd had 2 days without showering, so we were allowed to go and get a 15-minute shower to sort of freshen up, even though you were showering and putting on your old Grundigs. It was just nice to be fresh. But I remember the air raid siren going off, and I remember being stood there thinking, this ain't fucking real. And then I just saw the veterans that had been there that just fucking jumped under the tables, and you were like, oh, this is fucking real shit. And you get under the fucking table, and it was like that smash in the face of reality. And then I remember almost every single day, it's ingrained in you because it's such an unusual experience. It's every day was different. but every day was also the same. It's really weird. It's hard to explain, but I remember it so vividly. So, is it PTSD? No, probably not from my perspective. But there is an element where it's traumatic enough of an experience that it's ingrained that 6 months in my brain, like vividly, like I can recall it. Straight away, I can tell you, the row that I was in. So I was in the fourth one. So there was 5 rows of 4, 5 rows of five single rows. So 5 people in a single row, 2 rows, 10 people in total in our 10. I was the one in the corner. On the 5th one. So, but I remember that, and I remember my first night. I remember fucking everything. I remember it. It's such a vivid experience. So I can imagine there's people that are out there, that have experienced these types of things, and you could sort of almost, when you ask a soldier, how do you feel? How's your mental health? Because that's the opening question I had. That was my opening gambit. How's your mental health? How are you? How have you been? And as soon as you say that, you can see that they trigger straight to a negative time in their life. And a lot of soldiers have that. A lot of men have that. And you can see that. And the reason I talk about men is because, please forgive me, it's not trying to undo, and I will say it's because I'm obviously online, I'm not undoing any detriment to women's mental health at all. What I'm trying to do is just elevate the position that men need to be in, to be vocal, and tell us to talk about these things, because you can see it in their faces. If you ask a man, how's your mental health? First off, they'll be caught by shock and they'll probably just go, yeah, I'm okay. What are you on about, weirdo? It's normally the response. Why the fuck are you asking me that question? That's a bit personal. But if you genuinely get through to somebody where it hits a button, it's a really weird, you can see them tapping into part of their brain. It's almost like they're looking for that filing system. They're sort of chuntering through to find the deepest, darkest bit and go, am I okay? Well, okay. Well, I haven't thought about that in a while, so yeah, I must be okay. And it's really weird, because that's often where we go. As men, we often look for, something that's triggered us, something that's made us feel sad. And it's, we as a man, I have an abundance of times where I've felt sad. And it's overwhelming. It's very, very overwhelming. But at the same time, it's really rewarding when you get through those. And again, my opening gambit was, how's your mental health? And my finisher was, it's really positive to see you here today smiling. That was my positives, that was my bit to them. So despite what they said in the short space of time where I'd ask them how their mental health was, when I got to the end, I was like, I'm just really glad. Thank you for your service, and I'm really glad to have you here today, representing your part, doing your part. And you always left with a smile, and you always left with a positive element in their brain. And I think that's the importance of that, is to acknowledge, and that's what we need to do in our mental health anyway, is acknowledge. Doesn't matter how far you've come and what position you're in, there's always something positive in your brain to search for, and if you got to the crux of it, to be perfectly honest, if you got to the real raw, you had nothing to fucking really look back on and go, why the fuck am I here? This is fucking pointless. Then you go straight back to the fact that you're here. You're one in a cajillion, whatever that fucking percentage is of that sperm fertilizing that egg. You are the smallest of smallest percentage of you being here. So if you really don't have anything, remember that you are a gift. We are a gift. Although we didn't choose to be here, the fact that we're here, the fact that I'm talking to you, the fact that you're listening, the fact that you're doing whatever you've done in your life so far, irrelevant if it's negative, look at it as a reflection point. If it's positive, then keep going. Absolutely keep going. So it's really weird to make sure you finish on that positive, because what you don't want to do is open Pandora's box of mental health and then basically leave that wide open. That's a dangerous thing to do. And it's often when I do reflection, and the reason I hark on so much about reflection is it saved not my life, because that's an extremity, isn't it? It saved my life, but it saved my mood last week. And I mean, I was in a real fucking horrible place, and I felt almost burnt out, to be honest. I got to sort of Monday and I felt okay, not too bad. I probably overcharged myself a little bit. Well, again, my reflection point was Friday, so I took Friday off. So I'm going to go Star Wars theme here. I'm going to go to the front and then fucking take you backwards. So Friday, I took Friday off. and you say to yourself, why did you take Friday off? I needed Friday off. I needed that time off. I'd massively overcommitted. And then I felt completely burnt out. I felt almost emotional. I felt frozen is probably the easiest way to say it. And what I'd ultimately done was I made a fool of myself internally. I'd done the worst thing you can imagine. Hold on, I'm just going to put this on silent. Bear with. Yeah, it's on silent now. Sorry about that. What I'd done is I'd overcommitted. 2 weeks prior to this week, or last week, 2 weeks prior to last week, so 3 weeks ago, encroaching on that fourth week, I'd made arrangements to see an old friend I hadn't seen for 2 years. She's a really, really lovely lady. She's just turned 70. I knew her from my old job, and I'd made an arrangement. We hadn't got together to go and have a coffee on Thursday. And I was like, okay, no problems at all. And at the time, I was like, oh, that's 2 weeks away. I'm not going to make any plans. That's fucking fine. So what I'd done was I'd had that in the back burner, completely forgot about it, like you do. ADHD, come on, we're coming back to the forgetfulness. So I'd forgotten about it, no problems at all. But it didn't really pay, it wasn't coming up. So I kind of made the plans, agreed the plans, felt happy at the time, and then thought it's not a burden. I don't have to stress or worry about it. It's 2 weeks away. Came round to that 2 weeks quite quickly, didn't it? And what I'd also done the week before is I felt in a good mood. I'd not been into work for about 3 or 4 days. I'd gone into work. I felt really good. I saw loads of friends. I was hugging. I was like, "Wee, how's everybody?" I had a real big high spirits. And then somebody had said to me, "Do you fancy doing the midnight swim in the sea?" Which is like the full moon swim in the sea. And I was like, "What's this? This is really intriguing." It's like, we go along to the Bournemouth Sea. We'll jump in the sea at night, 9 o'clock at night, when there's full moons out, and it's, at its peak. And it was one of the days where it was the biggest it's going to be. And I was like, "Oh, this sounds fucking amazing. I'm going to fucking book this in. Yes, let's go." So bear in mind now that that's Wednesday booked, and that's Thursday booked. Okay, so Wednesday evening's booked, Thursday evening's booked. Also, I normally go to the pub on a Wednesday evening and play darts and pool, but I knew I'd overcommitted, so I had to cancel one of those. So I'd already started getting a bit anxious about this now. You can see where this is going. Then what I'd done on the Wednesday was a friend had asked me, could I help them? They just moved into a house, and could I help them build their units? And I was like, yeah, no problems. When do you want to do that? He said, I'll let you know. So this was so I'd gone to work, done my work, and it was a Saturday. And then on the Saturday, I'd messaged saying, "Oh, did you want me to come around next week? What day's good for you?" He turned around and said to me, "Well, can you come around Wednesday?" And I was like, Wednesday. I was like, yeah, I'll take a half day. So I booked a half day off. So I said, I'll go in Monday. I'll book a half day Wednesday. That sounds like a good day. And I was thinking to myself, I've got nothing booked. I'll be fine. So what have I done now? I've booked a Wednesday afternoon off to go and help somebody. I've booked a 9 o'clock drive down to Bournemouth, and I've booked a Thursday afternoon, 2 o'clock, to have a cup of coffee with a friend. So I've done this now. And I'd got to Tuesday, and I'd had a really long day in Tuesday, a really long day. I'd had an 11-hour day in work, so I was fucking massively exhausted. And then I came into the overwhelming situation where I'd had all of these plans that I'd managed with work on Friday, and also I'd had a really important meeting on Thursday afternoon as well. So I had to cancel that Thursday afternoon and move that to Friday. So I don't like working Fridays, but it was a Friday afternoon, so I knew already I set myself by moving a meeting from a Thursday afternoon to a Friday afternoon. So you can imagine my fucking ADHD brain, and I'm going to talk about the neurodivergency because that's what I'm here to talk about, had booked all this fucking shit because Mr. Happy was happy at certain points of his day, and then Mr. fucking Tism man goes, well, how the fuck am I going to manage all this? I need to now move this. I need to move that to there. I don't want to move it to the afternoon, so I've got to try and make some sort of excuse that I can't do the afternoon. Hope you can do the morning. I'm going to have to go around and bust my ass to fucking do that, build those units for you. I'm going to have to cancel the evening. Am I cancelling the pub or am I cancelling the fucking full moon party? Well, what I'd done in all of that, so whilst I was planning all of this, I got hugely overwhelmed and completely crashed. And what I didn't do was I didn't turn up to the full moon thing. I didn't turn up to the fucking coffee. And I'd helped the person do the DIY to try and give myself some sort of serotonin boost, to give myself some sort of satisfaction that I'd helped somebody this week. I managed to do all my work, and I blasted all of my work out on Thursday afternoon to try and get this, because I'd cancelled the meal, the coffee with my friend. This is how chaos it is. For her to then turn around to me and say she was sick, the point I was having the meeting for, and could she do it the following Friday in the morning? So I'd massively overwhelmed myself to the point where I thought I'd crashed out. I thought, I've got burnout here. I've got a massive... I gave myself a fucking huge migraine. I made myself massively sick, and I'd completely and utterly exhausted myself to the point where I took Friday off and I slept for 16 hours on Friday. I'd slept the night, Thursday night. I went to bed at 8 o'clock because I couldn't fucking cope anymore. And I slept for 16 fucking hours straight. And then I spent an extra hour and a half in bed just procrastinating on what the fuck I'd done. I was completely and utterly overwhelmed because I just overcommitted everything. And I couldn't understand why. I was just overly sad that I was like, I have let this person down. I've let this person down. I've managed to do that, but that's not enough. That's not enough. Just helping one person when you said you were going to, what happens if I don't see that person again now when I've had a fucking coffee? So overdrive, overthinking came into play. Christ alive. I'd absolutely exhausted myself. It was fucking horrendous. And then I was sat there Friday and I just didn't know what to do. I was absolutely exhausted. And then fucking Friday afternoon came along when I'd woken up and I sort of moved around and I was like, right, I need to do something. And I didn't know what to do. And I couldn't. I just froze on the sofa and just sat there staring at the fucking TV, watching some mind-numbing TV. I was like, this is the best I can do. And then I went to bed at fucking 9 o'clock on fucking Friday and then woke up again Saturday after about 13 hours sleep, I think it was, 12 and a half hours sleep I'd had. And then I went out and I just about managed to do some roofing in my garden, a bit of DIY. That is how overwhelmed I made myself. So I sat there, Saturday afternoon was the first time I sat there and I was like, sat there just mulling over. I was in the man cave and I was like, giving it this, what the fuck are you doing? Why have you let so many people down? Rejection sensitivity disorder just fucking absolutely blew me away. I was so overwhelmed with what I'd not achieved, what I'd overly achieved that I said I was going to do, what I'd underachieved, who I'd let down. Again, I'm letting people down and I keep going over it. I stopped eating. I stopped drinking. I don't mean drinking alcohol, just drinking general fucking juice. I completely and utterly wiped myself. I just exhausted. It's almost like I'd forgotten every function. And I was sat there going, what the fuck? I was meant to, that was it. I forgot one. And Friday night, I'd booked to go out Friday night for a couple of drinks for a leave and do for one of my friends. And I was like, I got to Friday 2 o'clock and I was like, I texted my friend and I went, I can't do this. I genuinely cannot come out. I said, there's no fucking way. I said, I'm fucked. So then I cancelled and luckily it came, when I say luckily, come back and it was okay. Everyone was happy. They said no problems at all, which alleviated me a little bit. But then again, on face value, it's only alleviating it a little bit. Really, I'm disheartened because that's the third person I'd let down that week. So that's 3 things I booked out of the 4 and 3 I didn't do. So I was just, and because I'd let down everybody and took the day off, I felt that you can see where this is going. It's exhausting. Even now, just talking about it just brings back fucking a trauma from the fucking weekend. So I reflected heavily and I was like, right, what the fuck is going on here, James? And I reverted back to my fucking, my reflection time. And I was like, it's got to be something you've done here. Because at the time I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I didn't piece those pieces. I just fucking winged it. I just went, fuck it, I'm exhausted, I'm going to bed, I'll deal with it. And then what I did was I did the whole avoid tactic. So when I went into work, I went to a different desk, I hid away, I was hoping I wouldn't see anybody, I just didn't do anything. There was days where I went, right, do you know what, it's dinner time, I'm going home, I can't be fucking bothered. It wasn't because I couldn't be bothered, I just didn't want to bump into somebody and see somebody. So I'd done everything negative you can imagine. I was fucking wiped out. And then I got to Saturday and I was like, right, James, you've slept for the best part of 29 hours in 2 days. So I was like, I don't know what I've done here. What have I done wrong? Why am I this fucking tired? I'm not burnt out from work. And initially I thought it was work. I thought I'm taking on too much, but I never ever take on too much at work. I don't know why. Work doesn't seem like it overwhelms me. It wasn't. And the beauty of it was good because I was like, fuck, can I not cope at this level? And then I started getting a little bit of anxiety about not being able to cope at this level and people not thinking I couldn't cope. It was nothing to do with that. It was to do with the fact that I'd massively overcommitted myself socially. And I can't do that. It's even like people were talking to me and I was like, please don't talk to me anymore. I don't want to talk. I've overwhelmed myself. And then I just had to shut myself away. I didn't even socialize. I just fucking stayed in here. Literally, this was me in here, just fucking staring at that fucking ceiling for the best part of 2 days. I was like, what have you done, James? You've overwhelmed yourself massively. You've overcommitted yourself. You've organized this, and this. You've said you're going to help this person. So ultimately what I've done is I've let everybody down, which nothing I can fucking do. Mentally, that is it. That's nothing I can do. I've got this little fidget spinner, which is fucking great. I've been fucking messing around with it. It's like, if you've got ADHD, as you would know, you probably already found fidget spinners, but this is like a cool one because I can split it apart. I'm not going to do it because if it fucking falls apart, it will destroy me and I'll end up trying to find it. So yeah, so I reflected heavily Saturday afternoon. So Saturday afternoon, I sat in here, done a little bit of DIY, put some music on. The power of music in reflection time is invaluable. The right song comes on and it just ticks all the boxes along and you're sort of sat there going, yeah, okay. And it was nice because it just sort of kind of got a relaxed, mellow atmosphere about it. And I just kind of went, right, okay, James, what have you done wrong? You know, what were you meant to do? How'd your week go? You know, what's made you this fucking tired? And then basically I hadn't pieced two and two together. I hadn't pieced pieces together. I hadn't put two and two together. Or I did. I might have put two and two together and got fucking 25. And I was sat there going, well, I don't know what you've done wrong. You idiot. You're a loser. And then I sat there and then I pieced it all together and I went, wow. So you've overcommitted yourself, James. And this is the problem is, number one, booking things in advance is fucking horrendous. And I've done it so many times where I've booked in advance with people and I've said, yes, I'm going to do that. And then they get to it and I go, I can't fucking do it. I cannot fucking do it. I can't even face it. I can't face the social element of it. I can't face fucking the people. I can't face doing it. And then what I inherently do is just crash out. It was like I was meant to go to the gym. Oh, that was it. Number fucking 6. I was going to the gym at 7 o'clock on Saturday morning. I booked that on the Monday, going because we couldn't go to the gym on Monday. Tuesday I worked late. Wednesday I worked away from home, and that's when it started fucking failing for me on Tuesday. So Monday I booked to go on the gym on so Wednesday afternoon, because everything was crashing around me. I said to my mate, I'm not coming into work, and I couldn't come into work because I was avoiding everybody. I said, let's start Saturday morning 7 o'clock, because I knew he was working Saturday at 8 o'clock. I was like, let's go there. I'll come and meet you at work, because he had a job in work. I was like, I'll meet you. I'll do 45 minutes in the gym, and then you can go off to fucking work, and I'll go home, and I'll have my day, and I'll be real, like, positive, because I've done a little bit of gym, and I've done a little bit of this, and a little bit of that, and it's 7 o'clock, and I've got the whole day in front of me. I can just coast along, lovely, tra-la-la-la. No. So I didn't turn up to that, and I woke up at fucking, my alarm went off at 6:30, and I'd crashed out, and I went, what's that? And I didn't fucking know, so I just switched it off. Then my wife's fucking alarm went off at fucking 8 o'clock, because she goes off and does a thing with a friend on a Saturday morning. She goes off for a coffee and all that sort of stuff. And then but when I woke up at 8, I was like, she said to me, you should have been at the gym, James. Why are you here? And I was like, I don't know. Why should I have been at the gym? So I opened up my phone quickly, and then I fucking looked, and it was my mate, and I said, I'm really sorry, mate, I'm not going to make it. And then went back to sleep, because I was fucking exhausted, wiped out. And then I woke up at 10 o'clock. Went to the was it about 10? No, went to 11 o'clock. I woke up and then went straight off to see my therapist, because I booked to see my therapist, because I was like, I need someone to download on. And that's when I started piecing it all together. When I'd come back, I'd not pieced it together in totality with her, because I didn't really talk about those things, but I talked about an element of just being overwhelmed and sort of blamed work a little bit. In actual fact, it was fuck all to do with work. It was actually to do with me. It was to do with me over socializing. So, and it was weird, because I want to piece that all together. I phoned my therapist and just said, by the way, I know what it was. I did this and this, and she went, it's 100%. It's 100% what that is, James. You've overworked yourself, and it's weird, because I often forget about that bit because one side of my brain, we were talking about that side, is scattergun. It just wants to fucking socialize and be crazy, and is wacky and out the box and off the chain, like a fucking hand grenade. And then this side just needs that routine, needs that, gets overwhelmed really easy. And I suppose for me, that's the difference that a lot of people don't realise. Because I speak to a lot of people about ADHD, and I speak to a lot of people about autism, and I don't speak about the both. But I think for me, the reason it's harder to have both, and it's not harder to have both, because they all come with their own elements of difficulty for each person. But I think for me, the problem is, I'm fighting that structure over here. I'm fighting structure with, rebellion and fucking craziness. And for me, that's a constant, like I said, that's a constant battle. And it's like, you could just imagine it's just clashing all the fucking time, and you're like, fuck off. And sometimes, like I said, one part of my brain's going, go and do that, go to the full moon swim. And then my brain, other side of my brain was going, yeah, but where are we going? Where are we meeting? What time are we meeting? It was raining. So are we prepared for rain? Where are we going to be parking? Where are we going to fucking walk from where we park? How far is it to the beach? Do I need to be prepared for that? Is any of my friends coming? No. So this is literally going to be me on my own. This is what I was doing. So I was overwhelmed. So I was like thinking, fuck, I can't do this. It's like Monday. I was like, fuck, I can't do that on my own. Fucking hell. And then the other side was going, shut your fucking mouth. It's going to be chaos, mate. It's going to be great. You're not going to know what's in the sea. It's fucking dark. It's going to be freezing cold. The endorphins are going to be there. You're going to get that fucking serotonin, buddy. Let's fucking go. Dopamine. You're going to be with a group of people. So that's going to be fucking chaos. You're going to hear lots of laughter, lots of scary, ooh, I'm not going to know what's in the sea. It's going to be dark, but it's going to be pretty. Yeah. So that's my fucking exhaust. That is a snippet of fucking reality in my brain. I'm like going, fucking hell. So they sit there, and then what happens is, he says yes. He says fucking woo, woo, woo. But what happens is when I say no, the battle that I have with rejection sensitivity is heightened. It's to the fucking moon. It's off. Because he's going like, you've let everyone down, you fucking piece of shit. And he's going, well, I've got no dopamine now. I didn't get the serotonin I was promised. I didn't get that excitement. So what the fuck are we doing about this, mate? Because you've now made me really angry and you're sad. So then you get angry and sad. And I remember I was walking around Saturday fucking afternoon in town, and I was going, everything was fucking annoying me. Like people's voices. I was like, that's fucking annoying. Someone shut that fucking kid up now. Oh my fucking God. And somebody, to the point where I was sat in the Costa and I was having a coffee just trying to relax, and somebody had opened the door and left the door open. And I literally went, were you born in a fucking barn, mate? And this guy looked at me and went, huh? I said, were you born in a barn? Close the fucking door, mate. I'm sat by the door. It's the only seat available and I'm fucking freezing. But that was where I'd gone. And that straight away I knew. I was like, fucking hell, James, calm yourself down. There's old excitement over here. This side of the brain wants to fucking get his dopamine. So where's he going to get his dopamine? Well, the closest, quickest way to get dopamine, start kicking off for somebody because you're going to get excited. And that's that battle. People do not talk. And this is the bit where I say neurotypical people are fucking crazy themselves, because I'd love to be neurotypical. I genuinely, I know people look at it as, and it is a superpower, and I still stand by it. Being neurodivergent is a superpower. It is, you're on a different frequency. You see things holistically. You see things almost before they happen, or as they're happening, it slows down. You can manage things. Even to the point where when I went and helped my friend build the chest of drawers, while they were building the little bedside unit, I was building the bigger one. I said, I'll take the bigger one because, it's easier. Watch them. They just opened up the bag of fucking nuts and bolts and just threw them on the fucking floor and just went, right, okay, crack on. And then opened up the box and then put the box in. And I was like, I looked across and I went, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I didn't want to, you're 30 fucking 3. You're a full grown adult. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But how the fuck are you working like that? So what I did was I put all my panels out nice and fucking level, opened the bag carefully and put everything into different piles so that I knew where to grab it from and what different size nuts and all that were. And then I was like, well, that's easy. So then I just picked like 1, 2, they're all numbered. And I was like, right, 1, 2, build, and then just follow it through. Methodical. Smash mine out in fucking quarter of the time, to the point where I went, I'll help you. I'll fucking help you. But that's exhausting though. At the same time, to be like that all the time, to have OCD, to be neurodivergent in the sense where you've got OCD, you like everything pristine, perfect, you like it matching, you like routine, you like structure, but at the same time I've got the negative element of neurodivergency, which is I like craziness. My boss said to me the other day, we were talking about something, and it was a bit of a weird one, but we were talking around and we made a fleeting joke, and I should be professional, and I know I should be professional, but this is my mindset. And we were sat there and we were talking to a colleague, and we said to the colleague, oh, didn't you used to date that person? And they were like, and it was a running joke because the person was older, and basically this other lady colleague used to look after him when he was old, and he'd hurt his back, and basically everyone used to take the piss, saying he was going around there and they were having sex with each other. Bit of a laugh, adult joke, I suppose, adult humour, shall we say. Anyway, so we spoke about it and we laughed and went, oh yeah, isn't that, you used to date him, didn't you? And I went, oh yeah, I used to go around there for a fucking finger blast. Whoa! Where did that come from, James? I was on a health and safety walk around. Where the fuck did that? And my boss turned around to me and he was like, James, what are you doing? What are you doing? He never said anything about that. And I was like, oh no, just my brain went there. Your brain went fucking where, mate? What are you doing? Now, that's because that's how crazy I can fucking be. And it's like, sometimes that mask is fucking horrendous to put on. So it's a really interesting thing, but like, it's so overpowering, so overwhelming to be neurodivergent. It really is. It's not fun. It's not fun. Like I said, there's a superpower element to it. That rain, by the way, you can hear that cascading down probably. Maybe you can hear a subtle bit in the background. I can hear it. It's fucking teeming it down, mate. Fucking British weather. So it's really interesting how, although I see it as a superpower, absolutely, it is a superpower for certain things like building, DIY, painting, having attention to detail, policy writing, procedure writing, all of these things that I'm inherently good at. And I'm good at those because of my neurotypical brain. But what there is an element of is there's a huge, huge negative side to that is just exhausting. And one of the biggest things, which is one of the biggest things that you get taken advantage of in the workplace with autism, I think, and I've seen this certainly in the corporate world, is because there's inherently a lot of neurotypicals in leadership. You don't tend to get a lot of neurodivergent people in them because inherently neurodivergent, you are a bit batshit crazy. You don't fit the mold, which is a really horrible thing to think about because I want to fit that mold, but I'll never fit that mold, not properly. Although I will do amazing at my job, and I'm very confident in the fact that I would be a good leader. The problem with being neurodivergent in the leadership corporate environment is very much the base of you are a loose cannon, and that's the ADHD is I am a loose cannon. So and that's the bit that they don't like, because they like you to be professional and on point and structured and straight. Well, there's if I was just autistic, I'd expect, and depend on where I was on the spectrum, to be fair, because again we're understanding that there's people on the spectrum that are that are neurodivergent and in the autistic spectrum, that are non-verbal, and that's often what we associate autism with is the higher spectrum of neurodivergency. Unfortunately, there is a lot of people with autistic traits, and I mean severe autistic traits. I would class myself severe enough to be diagnosed with it. That makes life that little bit more difficult. In the right environment, you can thrive, and I think that's one of the biggest things that I can't find. Is I'm really struggling to find the right environment to suit my mental health or suit my neurodivergence. That is just fucking cascading down. I'm really struggling to find a job role. I know what I want, and I know what would work for me. Working for myself is a huge thing, because if you're working for yourself in a structured environment, my autism will absolutely thrive, because I will do everything right, structured and perfection. And then the ADHD side of me will allow me to have a bit of fun and experiment and enjoy life, because I'm working for myself, not constraints of being in work at a certain time, leaving at a certain time, having a dinner at a certain time. Everything in the normal world, as I call it, working for a corporation, something like that, is really, really hard. Although it can be rewarding financially to a degree, it is very hard. It's not the place for a neurodivergent person. Is the corporate space? It really isn't. It's a fucking horrible thing to manage. You often, like, I have to manage myself now more than I have ever had to do. Like in any other job, in any of the entirety, I was luckily I was in military environment, which is, again, the military is made for ADHD and autism. It's made for it. Like, I don't care whether you go Army, Navy, RAF, Army Air Corps, whatever you fucking want to do out of those, they are made for ADHD autistic. If you are listening to this and you want to be able to manage your ADHD and manage your autism, join the fucking military. And I'm saying that even if you just did the baseline of 6 plus fucking 12, whatever the sign-on period is now, even if you just did the basics, you'll get a qualification and you get structured. The one thing I learned massively and really, really, really benefited my ADHD was everything that came with the military. So that was everything was new, and it was always new. Every day was always new. It was always fucking crazy, colourful. You were shooting rifles. You were, like I said, you were doing gas chamber stuff, not with gas, as in, gas, but as in, with thingy tablets, what do they call it? I can't remember what they're called. They're in my fucking head. They've gone. I don't know what they're called. They're a bastard as well. Tear gas, basically. There's a thing for them, but you used to go in, you have to take your mask off and then fucking put this Fuller's Earth stuff in your mask and put it out and then say your name, rank, and number with your eyes open and breathe it in, and you'd come out with like this, like fucking snot flying out your nose, going, oh, like literally dying. But yeah, in your NBC suit, sweating your ass off. But every day was fucking, I'm getting excited about it now because that's how exciting the military was for me. So I've had years of that, of going away on exercise, going away on tours, going away to different countries, volunteer basis all the time. Sports is an abundance. So you get to do your own sport that you like every single week, and you get paid for it. It is a no fucking brainer. The camaraderie shit that comes with the military when you're in it's unmeasurable because it's that good. You make some serious good friends. You have a serious bond in the military because you're all in the same boat. So if you're ADHD autistic and you want that structure, autism, you might struggle a little bit more. ADHD all day long, but autism, you may struggle a little bit, but then you just got to find the right niche. You've got to find the right the right trade group to go into, basically. I went into painting and finishing, so I was spraying aircraft, so it was dirty, grimy, just what I liked. It was get down on the fucking shop floor, painting. You were painting different colors. You were seen as quite high up in the the food chain, because everybody wanted something off you because you could paint. So you could paint cars, shoes, whatever, fucking whatever you wanted, it could paint. So you were always wanted, and you always used to get rewards for doing such things. So I painted a sign once for a squadron, and I got a flight in a Typhoon Eurofighter. 2 hours doing loop-the-loops and shit like that. Absolutely impeccable to get something so honourable and enjoy. But it was because I was a painter and someone wanted this thing, and I put my heart and soul into this job like I do every job. And inherently it came back, and the guy went, fucking wow, we've never had anything like this. This is a lifetime sign. And I'd done it fucking pristine. It was like glass. So again, really, really rewarding. And if you find the right trade, and in an autistic trade, you're going to get the structure of being in the military. Everything's uniform, everything's the same. You do the same thing because you need routine in the military, because military means you succeed. Because if you do everything the same way, you don't fail. So what does that give you? That gives you a great structure. Everything's the same. You get up at the same time. You do the same marching. You do the same, yes, sir, 3 bags full, sir. You do the same salute. You do the same here. You're the same there. Your fitness test is on your birthday every single year, the same time every single year. Your NBC test is the same time every fucking year. It's routine. It's a fucking autistic's dream. So yes, I was able to mask for years, because that was just life. And then when I came out of the military and became a civilian, I was still working for the military as a civilian, so I had the same structure. I had to be in certain time, do certain jobs. Everything was the same all day. If I wanted a little bit of fun, a little bit of excitement, I would paint a car or paint a panel or paint a sign or make something. So I had an element of fun to treat the unpredictable side of my brain. So again, didn't even notice it. I've been in the fucking absolute I've been in the corporate world for the last 5 years, and it's absolutely ruined me. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, because the hardship for me with this corporate environment is I can look holistically and I can see where the fucking failures are, because that's the beauty of neurodivergency. Is I said it at the start, you're on a different frequency. You do see things holistically. I'm very good at looking at failure points. The problem is nobody wants to listen to the fucking failure points, because they just want to business along. And you're like, well, that's failing because of this. And one of the biggest things in the corporate world is they'll do nothing. And then you get to the point where you've got to do something. And that's even more frustrating, because you go, I highlighted this a year ago and you did nothing. Why are we doing this now? And it's all to die. It's a game. It's a fucking game. It's the easiest thing I'm going to say, but it's the hardest game to play when you can fix the game quite quickly. The game's broken and you know how to fix it, but you can't fix it. But what you do is you get, and this is the bit that I'm finding the most difficult with the autistic thing, is you get asked to do something, you will say yes. You will often get given a tight deadline, which again appeals to the ADHD side of me, because I go, deadline is tomorrow or deadline's in next week. So that means that this powerhouse is going to fucking jump in and go, brilliant, let's fucking go. And this one's going to go, okay, so I need to think about this. So it's going to work at pace, and we're going to undo things. And we're going to write a procedure, and we're going to fucking get it out. And that's what I've done for 2 years. I have been systematically writing policies and procedures to make everything work. Have I been rewarded for it? You could say there's an element of reward to it, but not really, not the reward I truly wanted. So that's the bit. But nobody wants to see you because you're too unpredictable, and you're too much of a yes man, because you say yes and you do things to the highest level because of your OCD and because of your structure and because of your perfectionism. Because of all of those traits, you do a really good fucking job, and often better than anyone can do. So you're abused a lot. And I use the word abused because it is abuse. You're sat there going, I'm never going to say no because I feel I've got to do this. So it's a very, 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 and because you don't get rewarded, the beauty of being in the military was if you did the yes, sir, 3 bags full, sir, you turned up on time, you did a great fucking job, you drove positivity and everything else, and you did, policy procedures, you followed them down to a T, you did your job, you got an annual reward. Your annual reward was either a bonus or a promotion, and you got a promotion, and that was it. And that was the way it worked. So you always knew there was something to aim for. You were like, why am I doing this hard work? Well, I'm doing this hard work because I'm going to get that at the end. So you you're hitting your reward mechanism, your reward template, and that's what I've not been hitting. The reward template's not there because you find a problem that's already been found, everyone ignores you, then you have to go back again, which really upsets you. Then you have to redo it, and then you don't get rewarded because it's a case of, fuck, we just needed that done, well done. You might get a pat on the back or someone might say thank you, but you're not getting anything. So you'll get to the point where you're chasing the dragon because you're like, fucking hell, this is getting harder now. And that's where very much you can be at. It's very difficult to manage that because you're not getting the reward mechanism. You're not getting the dopamine hit. So he'll start switching off very soon. And when he starts switching off, he starts going into a negative place. He starts to become rebellious and going, fuck you then, mate. I'm not going to do this. And then when he's the driver on the left-hand side, that rebellious person, the devil as I call him, when he starts becoming the driver, it gets dangerous. And that's where you've got to sort of really start to reflect and manage yourself, which is ultimately what I've been doing. I've been doing it in an absolute abundance, just reflecting, finding out what I'm doing wrong, trying to learn from it. I mean, this is a basic mistake I made last week. Absolutely basic mistake. Billy basic mistake. But what I did was I fucked myself over and I did it anyway. And then when I come to it, I started getting all sorts of emotions. I exhausted myself. It's taken me the best part of the weekend to recover. I'm here on Monday night, Remembrance Sunday, talking to you, going to work tomorrow morning, thinking, fucking how did my weekend go? Because I burnt myself out, socially burnt myself out without actually socializing. Just the thought of socializing burnt me out. And it's incredible how I do this. And even though that's something I should have learned a long time ago, I haven't learned from it. I'm still here doing those mistakes because I'm a people pleaser. I want people to be happy and I don't want to let people down. And it's always, always, always at the detriment of your own mindset, especially if you're neurodivergent. If you're neurodivergent, you will fuck yourself over to make yourself, I'm going to do that because, yes, it will make this part of me happy. So it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle. I did have something else I was going to jib to you about today. It was mainly about reflection, really, because I think that that's what I was mainly talking about. But it sort of fed in. I think the other element was that bit of not. I'm going to reverse that, mate, because I couldn't spit my words out then. That was horrendous. Rejection sensitivity disorder, and that's one of the things I felt most powerful. I think the reason reflection helped me. I wouldn't say it saved my life, but I would say it helped me to learn. It helped me to understand. It helped me to know that I wasn't being burnt out for things that I should be able to control, like work and stuff like that. Because I can do that with my eyes closed. And I do normally enjoy the regular drumbeat. I just don't enjoy it when I book myself to do things that inherently pulls me away from work or pulls me into areas that I shouldn't need to be, or I go and I'm like, fuck, I know that's going to mentally or physically exhaust me by doing that, which means I'm going to be knackered the next day, which means and I don't think about the repercussions often. I just go in balls deep. So for me, the reflection helped, and it helped me to understand, because mentally I needed to understand where I'd got to and how I'd got to. And again, it's that inward looking, which a lot of us don't do. I'm currently mentoring actually someone at work, and one of the biggest things you can tell they don't do is reflect. It's one of my first things. It's one of my first go-tos with that person. I said, "Oh, do you do any sort of like reflection? Do you any sort of inward thinking, or do you stop? Is there any coping mechanisms for you to stop and think, or do you just go all in?" And this person who's autistic, but quite high, probably a little bit more autistic than me, to be fair. But what they tend to do is, I think he's ADHD as well, because he hasn't been diagnosed for ADHD. But I think I'm possibly going to recommend. I've had a couple of sessions with him, and he's very much he'll swear, but what he does is he swears, and it sort of gives him a bit of a dopamine rise because he's quite a young lad. He's like 19. So he thinks it's okay to sound, and then people laugh because he's a bit outrageous. But he's also very intelligent and very sort of switched on about it, but also a bit of an inward thinker. An introvert, sorry, not an inward thinker, but an introvert as well. So you can sort of kind of see the cross skills that he's developed, which are very similar to mine, which is hence the reason why we got matched, so to speak, at work. And someone said, this person's really struggling at work. They're outrageous and don't have any filter, and also they're not very self-aware, and one thing I've drilled down with myself is inward thinking, reflection, and self-awareness. One of the biggest things for me is self-awareness, which is why I took myself out of the situations last week. So one of the biggest booster for me was I was self-aware enough to understand that I needed to be out of that situation, and I needed to go home, and I needed to reflect and relax. I needed to just achieve what I could that day without sort of planning myself to do anything big. So I'd had the maturity to understand that I needed to take myself away, although I couldn't understand why it happened and I didn't know the details of the granular details of where I'd got to. I knew enough to take myself out of the situation. And the trigger point for me, the biggest trigger point with Thursday was my fucking migraine in the morning. I just sat there and I was like, I can't cope with this. This is brutal. And it made me go home, switch off Thursday afternoon and take Friday off. Luckily enough, I get to do that, but I just basically went, I need some time tomorrow. I've got no major work on. I'm going to take tomorrow off and I just need to rest. And everyone was naturally worried. I was like, I don't think this is work related, but I just don't know. So reflection gave me that ability to really get into the granular details. But one of the biggest things that people don't talk about with neurodivergency is that rejection sensitivity disorder. Basically, ultimately, the sadness that comes with everything and the failure. And that's often what I get. And I get that a lot. I get a lot of failure, which always leads into overthinking because you overthink the situation. I mean, I've seen it again. If I'm going to tie it in, I see it a lot more in the corporate environment and the current environment I'm in because you don't know how people think and feel. It's very fast paced. You don't know whether you've let someone down because you don't get that continuity of information or that conversation with that person because you might get it sporadically, which often leads to me overthinking, saying, well, why are they not talking to me? Have I done something wrong? 9 times out of 10, they haven't. They've just been overwhelmed with their own workload. And then you kind of get to the point where you're like, I don't really know what I've done. And then you get sad and then you close down and then that sadness becomes a little bit of anger and a little bit of resentment. And then you overthink and then you basically get to the point where you just shut down. And that's a bit that is not spoken about enough with neurodivergency is the sadness that you get from not achieving what you want to achieve. And like I said, for me, I get a battle of both sides. I get a battle of, not being able to do something and get the excitement and the rejection, the dopamine that I need from that. So that may be whatever that may be. And that may be because my structured brain's telling my fucking crazy brain to calm down. Then you might get the point where you don't achieve something to the right level, or you get a little bit of negative feedback about something and you don't understand why, but you take it to heart. And this happens a lot all the time. And then you overthink things. And that sadness drives real negative behaviors, a lot of negative behaviors that people don't talk about. Which is like shutting yourself down, shutting yourself away, becoming having a negative attitude, not becoming positive. Everything's driven around negativity, and it's really sometimes hard to pull you out of that slump. Which is why I was diagnosed quite heavily with bipolar disorder, which is why they were going down bipolar disorder with me. It was because I kept going like this and like this, like this and like this and like this. I was doing the waves, and it was every 2 weeks. It was pretty much every 2 weeks. And what I was doing was I was overcommitting for a couple of weeks, and then I was not achieving what I'd overcommitted. And this all came about when I finally was able to talk openly about my mental health and had proper mental health sessions. And when we dived into things, and that's what, because I went to a therapist first, and again, it's difficult because I've been diagnosed with a multitude of things because things have happened along my journey. And the bipolar disorder came about because I kept going like that. And what I was doing was I was booking myself, overwhelming myself to do wakeboarding or paint something and setting myself an unrealistic goal to finish that job. And when it when it got to the end and it wasn't the perfection that I'd envisioned, or it wasn't as I envisioned, or I didn't complete it in enough time and had to do more time, whatever it may be, the slump was horrendous because I set myself unrealistic targets all the fucking time. My life is an unrealistic target. Like I'll say to myself, I'm going to do this. I'll get it done to you by next week. Prime example. I've give me an absolute fucking prime example of somebody that overcommits and basically stupidly drives himself insane. It drives me insane. I had to complete this work manual, basically that my previous company had taken about 3 years to complete, to get it from start to finish with a multitude of people and a multitude of stakeholders. I did it in 3 days. 3 days, I'd made all interactive, PowerPoint, everything, fucking the works, got on PowerPoint so you could have it as an interactive with links and everything. And I pulled all this information together in 3 days. This other company had taken in 3 years. And luckily, because I'd had a vast amount of background knowledge from that company stuff anyway, so we sort of tie in with them a little bit. And also coupled with I'd been doing a high-level job for 2 years, so I had a lot of information to embed in it anyway. So for me, it was I thought it was relatively easy, but when I got my first feedback about it back, and it was negative feedback about certain parts, I took that really, really to heart. Rather than looking at the rewarding fact that I'd taken 3 days and I'd done it to a very high standard, I hadn't achieved. Number one, I'd got feedback, and I was like, I didn't want feedback. The only feedback I wanted was it was perfect. What do you mean it's not perfect? So I started overthinking about that then. Then I started overthinking about the feedback that was internalized every single time. I was going, well, why has he said that? What does he mean by that? To the point where I actively ignored some of the comments because I just deleted them. I was like, I'm going to pretend that he didn't put that because I don't know what it means and it seems really negative. So I deleted it. And then we come back down to do another review, and he went, well, where's that gone? I was like, I don't know, you can't have left anything. Oh, well, we'll raise it now. Oh, okay, would you fancy? And I had to break it down because I saw it as so much negativity that it crushed me. I didn't look at the positives that I'd completed in a short space of time. I didn't look at any of the positives that I'd done a very professional standard to start with. I just looked at it that it wasn't complete, and it had negative feedback. The feedback was minor, by the way. You know, it was real minor. It was like, this is the wrong font. I think we need a bit more detail about this one. This needs a little less detail. So it was really just sort of pulling it all together nicely. I didn't see it like that. I look at it really fucking negatively, but it shut me down to the point where I didn't touch it for 3 weeks. And it gave me that much negativity internally. When he asked me to give to provide the update that on the back of the feedback. So what he'd done is given me feedback and said, make these changes. I'd ignored those changes, and I'd ignored it for 3 weeks. And then he said to me, James, you know, where are we getting with this? And I was like, oh, okay. And I'd put it off that much and switched off from it that much that I didn't want to start it again because I was done with it. I was like, I've had enough. You've given me negative feedback. I've really taken that to heart. I had to dig fucking deep to almost start the thing again, and did it over the space of 2 days, and then sent it back to him again. And then basically I was like, just to get it out of my fucking way, because I didn't want to see it because I'd taken it so negatively. And then on the Thursday just gone by, my really bad day in the morning, my colleague had come up to me and said to me, oh, I'm looking at your manual. Really good, you know. I've given a little bit of feedback. There was a couple of areas that were wrong, and in my head I went, fucking wrong. I'm not fucking wrong. I took it negatively again. And then she turned around to me and said, oh, we'll have a meeting, we'll have a little catch up about it. No, we fucking won't. I'm going home and I'm having the day off. And all that did was put the nail in the coffin to have the day off, because I was like, I don't want to fucking get negative feedback. Put it down on the form, tell me what the feedback is, and I'll make the amendments. I don't want to deal with it face to face. That's a real fucking, it's a horrible thing to do. But that's that rejection sensitivity disorder, something we do not talk about. And it's such a fucking overwhelming emotion in ADHD autism. It really is. In general, it's very overcomplicated, and it's a real negative driver in emotions. So I think that for me, if I was going to sort of kind of summarize, I suppose, a little bit of today, it's about, I think there's been some real big positives. I think there's some positives, from me personally. The positives was a reflection period of time, and how that made me realize that I just overcommitted. So really, that's quite an easy, manageable one for me to sort of kind of dive into and go, just don't overcommit again, James. Or manage your commitment, manage your diary a bit better, or manage your emotion when you're at work and you're feeling elevated. Calm yourself down a little bit. So I just noticed I'm getting quite close to the mic. So I think it's really important that that I manage that. And I think that the other real big takeaway for me was the humbling morning, sitting there at 11 o'clock, my 2-minute silence, for the fallen. So lest we forget and, remember the fallen. It was a real big emotional day anyway, which was my driving factor to want to talk today, really, because it fed so much into mental health. It fed so much into the positivity that a lot more men spoke openly about it. That's a huge positive, because we talk about the evolution of, I think one of the biggest driving factors for me in talking about mental health for men is because as women, I've seen some real huge changes with women, becoming equal pay, being seen as equals to men in the workplace and in life. And I think that's really important. I think it's so fundamental to allow them to have a place to speak up, and also, to dominate leadership roles and other roles that are very male driven. Especially, I think the turning point was allowing women on the front line and things like that. I think there's been some massive progression with how we look at women, and I think that's a real positive. Men just haven't evolved to that point where we talk about our emotions. We still get to the point where we still shut ourselves down. We still beat ourselves up. We couple that with the fact of the more is known about the neurodivergence side of things as well. And if you don't openly speak, it makes it even harder, because you procrastinate on things, you overthink things, you internalize things, you're angry. And if you can imagine, a man, when they get angry, there's always a fucking tidal wave of destruction around an angry man, isn't there? Whether it be verbalized or it could be abusive, could be anything. But one of the biggest steps is trying to get us to talk openly about our mental health, and I think that's been my driver, because I still am a very personal person when it comes to my mental health. I won't openly talk about it, which is a shame. I do a lot more now, and I think the podcast is really helping me, and hopefully it's helping people out there to talk openly about their mental health and help us to address these things. But it was really rewarding to see men this morning not only talk about their mental health and talk about the stresses, the strains of life. And it was the biggest part of me was seeing it across a wide spectrum of ages, seeing it from very young cadets, and I would say to them, how are you? How do you feel about the future of the military and all this? You wouldn't often, I didn't walk up to a child and go, how's your mental health? I'd be like, oh, you're a cadet. So, where do you see yourself? Are you really geared up? Is it something you want to do? Yeah, something I really want to do. How do you feel about the military, with things going on in the world? Because, they need to know. But, oh, yeah, it's quite a scary place, but, I'm here to do my bit for the country. A couple of people said, I'm doing this because my dad's told me I've got to do this, probably to try and instill a bit of discipline into them, which it is inherently fucking amazing for. But right up to the top end of the spectrum, where I was talking to old age pensioners, that had done, my dad's an OAP, he's 70, and he was in the Iraq War and the Gulf War. So, there's bits of elements of him that I talk about. And he's one of those ones that had the, he was seeing signs of Gulf War syndrome from the injections from the Gulf War, where they injected him with the, I don't know what it was. It was some medication, basically, that fucking ruined a load of men, and gave them basically fucking, real bad problems. So he was tested, and he luckily he made the decision to stop taking it. I think it was a bit later when a lot of people are going, I'm not taking this. It's almost like the NAPS tablets. I used to take the NAPS tablets, which were for malaria, and they made me feel like utter shit. So I just went, do you know what? They said to me, you either take them religiously, and then you have to take them religiously at the end. For these malaria tablets, not NAPS tablets, but the malaria tablets. And then, but 2 days in, I was fucking feeling like shit, so I just sacked it off. I was like, I'm not going to take these; they're horrible. So I fucking risk it for a biscuit, didn't I? That was the fucking this side of the brain, the chaos side. But it was, I think the positive for me to take away today is it was really rewarding to see different ages, and also men and women talking about the anxiety, talking about, depression. And I was often like, to the older men, I was like, have you seen it? Have you seen the signs? And they all came back and said, yeah, I've had the signs: stress, depression, overworked, underpaid, all those things. The military are overworked and underpaid after all. So it was really rewarding to see that, though. Really rewarding. I think it was, it was all put. There's 2 days that really put life into perspective for me personally, and that's Armed Forces Day. It's really, really good day. I really enjoy it. We were talking about it today because it's celebrating the armed forces, and also Remembrance Sunday because it's remembering the fallen, remembering our heroes, the ones that fight for us to have our freedom, and ultimately, why we're here and we're talking English. Christ, if it had been the other way around, we'd all be sat here eating schnitzels a German, we've got to remember the fallen. We've got to look at the gift, the sacrifice that they gave us. So it was rewarding to see men's mental health be spoken a little bit more freely than it has been before. Like I said, there's still some adjustment phases, I think, to go through, but we're in the positive direction. So anyway, I'm going to leave on that positive note, and leave you to reflect on that, and hopefully have an amazing week ahead. So happy Remembrance Sunday. Take care of yourself, and I look forward to talking to you all soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.